This is what it is, okay? I said empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow or it can crash. Be water, my friend.
Welcome to the 27th episode of the Deployment Dojo. Enunciate. Here we go. This is a live show, as you can tell, where we introduce and discuss software installation topics using the WiX Toolset. I'm your host, Rob Mensching, and joining me once again is my very good friend and still first student of the dojo, David Edson. David, how you doing, man? Uh-oh, did I lose David? Oh,
It was me.
Oh, there you go. It was all quiet for a second. I got nervous. I thought I was alone. My kids are home from spring break. I think yours were last week, right?
Yeah, last week was spring break here.
I told them, don't bother me unless there's blood and lots of it. So hopefully they're going to be doing their own thing for a little bit. We get the show going on because we have a lot of stuff to clean up. Last week, we took a little bit of time off, had fun, talked about the past, a bunch of other topics that came to your mind and other people in chat's mind. And we left behind a few things from episode 25 that we do need to fix up. So I think that's what we should get into because there's a couple things that we need to do. Sound good?
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's just go get right into it. Number 1, Visual Studio update. If you remember, Heatwave did not update well last time.
Oh, right.
Yep. So it turns out we did another update, a really tiny update, honestly just a version number to Heatwave, and I chose not to update it yet. And I'm going to push this button. So we went from Heatwave 100 to 101. I did get it to successfully install. I'm going to click the update button and then tell you about that. All right, it has downloaded. I'm going to say close. And then when I close Visual Studio, it should start the initialization process. Here we go. Hopefully this just works. How did I fix 1.0? Remember, I did a couple things real quick thinking that, well, because I install development builds of Heatwave on my machine, we'll bring the installer to this window.
Right.
I was like, oh, there's probably some things. I don't know because I didn't really clean up anything. This is good. Heatwave signed by Fire Giant. That's good. Let's go ahead and let it go. This is where we had problems. The way I fixed it was I just downloaded it manually, and then double-clicked the V6 from the Visual Studio Marketplace, and everything worked. So for some reason, when I did the update from inside Visual Studio, it didn't work. But when I ran it from outside, everything worked perfectly. This looks good, I think. Maybe. All right. So anyway, so if you have a problem with updating Heatwave inside Visual Studio for any reason, or any V6 for that matter, any extension to Visual Studio, my recommendation is go to marketplace.visualstudio.com, search for the thing you're looking for, and there will be a download link somewhere on there to get the V6. Just download it and then double click it, and you're good to go. All right, there we go. See, everything worked just perfectly this time. So one mess from last week, hopefully cleaned up. Now I'm going to relaunch Visual Studio, and we will now have Heatwave 101.
Nice.
We won't see it here. All right, let's go ahead and get our code open and get to actually doing some software installation stuff. Not that Heatwave isn't an important piece of the world. I'm going to quick double check here. You can go into help about Microsoft Visual Studio, and in here it shows all of your extensions, and we can see we have Heatwave 101.1. So there we go.
All right.
We got the good one installed. All right. So do you remember where we left off? What issue we were facing here last little bit ago?
No, I'm not sure what we were doing back a couple weeks ago.
So many weeks ago? Let me bring the sandbox up and let's spin it up. Hey, we have a Bert and we have Miyuki. Miyuki, I don't know if I'm saying the name right. I hope I'm getting it close. Great to have both of you here with us live. And we will go ahead and spin this thing up. Man, there's so many things that pop up now. All right, Nice and clean. All right, we're installing a service. That's why the services shows up. And here's our built test package, bin x86 debug, enus, and this should be from the last build. We've not built this time. This is leftover from episode 25, because episode 26, we just sat around chatting, right?
Right.
All right, we'll install this real quick. All right, we have our belt test, and we have deployment dojo belt test. We have our service running here. This all looks good. And I can double click our console app and we can see that it's doing its counting thing. That's where we left off. Remember, our service updates this text file and then we can print that out to the console. That's all this does. All right, so stop that, uninstall. All of our XEs get removed, but something's left behind.
Oh, right, the service, because it's running. It was running.
Well, yeah, the service doesn't clean up its file, right? It says stop count, but this file gets left behind because the service stopped, went away, and this file is left behind. This is what we need to clean up today.
Okay.
All right. And then if we have time at the end, I'll do one more thing. So let's jump into the kata. Okay, so back to Visual Studio. How do we clean up stuff being left behind? Before we get into that, I want to get into a little more setup theory, David.
Okay.
I want to talk about the kind of stuff that can get left behind. In this case, this is what we would call application data. This is data that your application creates for itself, talking to itself for whatever reason. It's solely owned by the application. All right, and it's all private. The internals are all known to just you, your code, things that you wrote. There's another set of data that's very important, arguably more important, is user data. This is the stuff that the user uses your application to create things, and that's then the user's files. And when they open those files back up into your application, the user considers them theirs. They are not part of the application. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes sense.
So our little counting file is completely an internal thing. The user didn't do anything. It's just internal data that the service is spitting out all the time. We should clean that up on uninstall. User data, we should not remove on uninstall. Hopefully that's just self-explanatorily obvious,
Sure.
right? The user did some stuff, you uninstall the content, and boom, it's gone. For example, think about college, university, high school, school in general. Thinking about Word, I'll pick on Office again. And if you uninstalled Office and it took your term paper with it, I think you'd be a little bit upset.
Right.
Right. All right. So this file that we're dealing with then is application data, not user data. We'll deal with user data in the future. Today, we get to deal with application data. Application data is way, way, way easier to deal with because we own it. And in this case, we can just destroy it when we're done. Maybe in the future, we'll go into more complicated scenarios because there's in between application data and user data, there's a third class of data that's configuration data. This is stuff the users did to your application to customize it, to make it their own. But it's tied to the application, and it's kind of a blurry line between user data, which is clearly owned by the user, and application data that is only useful to the application when you have the application. And we can talk about that configuration problem in the future as well when we have some of it. I think I'll try to manufacture up a problem, David, that needs configuration data, and then we can talk about how we deal with that on install and such.
Okay.
All right? Okay, so today we're cleaning up our application data. We're cleaning up the mess we left behind. So to do that, believe it or not, it's actually not that hard in the Windows installer to clean up this single file that we have left. Now I'm going to go in and I have all of these files to choose from. I could put it with the console app. I could put it with the Windows Forms app. I could put the cleanup in the package with our feature tree listing all of our components. I could put it over here with the folders. But it needs to be tied to a component, right? Grouped in with things that are being installed, uninstalled. So it gets put inside a component, which means that just floating a delete file concept around here inside the package doesn't make sense. We need to put it in one of our components. We could put it in with the console app. We could put it in with the Windows Form app and its shortcut. or we could put it in with the Windows service and its creation of its file and its service information. Where do you think we should organize this removal of this data?
Well, this one's a service, right? So in here in the service.
I agree, right? And this is a decision, right? This is a decision point that we get to make. It's like, where do we want to put it? Which component do we want to control it? And I agree with you. We should remove the file when we remove the service.
Right.
All right. So how do you think we do that? If you were to take a guess, how do you think we remove a file?
Delete.
How about remove file?
Okay. It could have been that or delete file or something.
Could have been delete file. It's remove file in this case. I kept trying to say remove file to kind of lead you down the path. But delete isn't a bad guess either. All right. So there's a bunch of different things you can specify for it. You in the end, you need to get a path to the file. So you can either specify the directory that you're going to find this file in, and then the name of the file, or you can specify the property, which resolves to the directory. Okay, so you can use either property or a directory. Remember how we saw directories can be used as properties sometimes?
Right.
So in our case, I'm not even sure. I don't remember if we need it here. Let's see, what is it saying it needs? Tag was not closed. Let's close the tag. Oh, come on, type right. Number one, we need the name of the file. And is it going to want a directory? Oh, on. Okay, yeah, all right. Shoot, do you remember the name of the file that we're creating? I think it's just the name of the service.
Yeah, I thought it was too.
All right, let's go ahead and hey, let's go look at the code. I think this one. Oh, I didn't want it in the designer. How is that ever going to be helpful? All right, view code. Initialize component, initialize path. That looks like what we want. Let's go jump to the definition of that function. And that's right, we'll get the full path to the file. Oh, it reads it from a registry key. Is that where we got it? Oh, that's the path. If we don't have the registry key set, then we have the Windows Service 1.txt.
There we go. Yep.
We're not doing the registry key thing yet, but that will add another wrinkle to it when we do support that registry key setting. Okay, so we're going to say this name, and we have to say when we want to remove the file, and we get the option to remove it on install, on uninstall, or both. Right? Do we want to erase the file when we're installing? Do we want to erase the file on uninstall, or do we want to just erase it every time? Clearly, we need to at least say uninstall, because that's where we want to remove it. And both wouldn't necessarily, in this case, be a bad option. If the file was left over, this would clean it up.
Okay.
Right? So, like, we left this file behind on episode 25. So if we put both, then we could clean up after our episode 25 thing that we left behind. Right?
Right.
Because we remove it on install, and then the service would start from scratch. Okay?
All right.
Now, remember I showed other options were a directory and property, but you'll also notice that this element is not upset. And if you were to read all this tiny little text in here that I know you guys can't read on the stream, it will say, hey, if you don't specify the directory where you want to remove this file, it will pick the one that the component is coming from. And the component is coming from install folder.
Right.
And install folder is where our service is being written, and the service writes the file right next to it. So this is all we need to remove this file from this directory.
Okay.
Presumably. Oh, okay. We forgot to do our build group. Let's get ourselves on a branch. We're on master and all kinds of things. All right. Let's. I got so excited about fixing.
27.
I got so excited about fixing Heatwave that I forgot to do all of our initialization work here. All right. We'll go into our build command and we'll update our build. 27. All right. That's all we do for getting started. Hello, Git. Oh. Visual Studio is not going to show me the Git page right now? Wow. All right. Guess what? Should we do it from the command line or should we do it from VS Code? Your choice, David.
The command line's fine.
All right. All right. So git add, and I have the tab completion. I want to add the build command because that's one file that we've edited, right? Yes. And I did save it. Good. There was that green. And now I can say git commit -m what do we say? Start episode 27. Cleaning up the mess we left with WiX before. All right, cool.
Cool.
Add it to be cached and then commit it, and that change is now made to the machine. Great. Now we have our change. We are on our branch. Git changes are not showing up inside Visual Studio for reasons I don't know. And we're ready to build. Let's go build everything. Now we're on the correct version. Yep. All right, I'm going to hit the build key. I'll just push this button up here. Build solution. Go. All right. And then while we're waiting for the build to roll, right down here in this, everything built. Yep, look, built our MSI package. We will start up our sandbox. And sandbox always opens over here. Pop up, wait for it. All right. So this is a clean sandbox, so we will not see episode 25 and its file left over. That's okay. Right. And everything's clean. Bin, x86, debug, enus. Let's start our build test package. You ready to go validate it?
Right, yep.
Here we go. Installing. Deployment Dojo. Hey, that's there. That's running. Do a refresh. We have our belt test running. And run the console app. That looks good. Okay.
Yep.
Last step. Uninstall. When I uninstall this, we hope to see this directory disappear right here, right?
Right.
Because it will be clean. We should get back to a nice clean state after uninstalling our product. Hit uninstall. Do you want to install it? Yes, I would, please. Wait for it. Yay! Directory's gone. Everything's clean. We have cleaned up the mess we left behind by deleting that file.
Nice.
Application data. Very easy. When the application owns it, you can just be like, look, when our application goes, this is our stuff that we left on your machine or that we put on your machine to help us do our work. When we leave, we're going to take all that stuff with us. It was not installed. Obviously, this data file does not get installed, but the installer is responsible for removing it as we go out. All right. That is a good thing. So let's do a git diff and see what changes we made. We're doing everything from the command line today, people. So here we go. And this is nice. What did we add? We added a blank line because that made it look pretty. And then we added the remove file. Done and done.
Right.
Look good?
Yeah.
Pretty simple. All right. I'm going to do it all in one go. Git commit AM, which takes all of the edited files, add them at one time with this message. And this is remove Windows service text file. Application data text file. Yeah. Something like that.
Okay.
Cool.
Yep.
Commit. Boom. Done. We made that change. We have no changes out on the machine. And that's the primary thing I wanted to cover. Now, any questions here? Things we've done so far. I know this is really basic.
Yeah, I don't think so. It's pretty straightforward there.
Very straightforward. Now, we could have put the directory on here. But what was the directory? Well, it would have been install folder. Yeah. That's where we put it, right? And you're like, okay, we could have done that. Why would we choose to do that when it's redundant? I don't know. It just makes things harder to deal with, all right? If we wanted to not always delete the file, do you remember when we had the shortcut? Let's see, on our Windows form. Remember we created a separate component to install our shortcut based off of the enabled desktop shortcut?
Right.
Right, remember that? Well,
yeah.
What if we didn't want to remove our remove file every time? Well, we would do the same thing. We create a separate component, create a condition on that component to say, hey, clean up this data when this is true, and then put the remove file in there.
Okay.
Right? If for some reason we wanted to leave this application data behind. Or more likely, it wasn't just application data. Or, there's a special file that most of the time people didn't want it. Or sometimes they didn't want it. You'd be able to set the property.
Right.
To control whether it was being updated. And we could dig into more of those exciting kind of scenarios. But if this basics works here, you can see this is this nice, easy way. You just declare what you want. I want this file removed. on always when I'm installing and uninstalling, and the Windows installer goes ahead and takes care of all the work for us. All we had to do is say, I want this to happen.
Right.
All right, cool. I'm going to switch to the next topic then.
Okay.
And you're like, wait, what other topic? This was the only thing that we had left over. So if you look in the comments for episode 25, someone asked about the services, and I made a comment about how everybody likes to create services, even though most people shouldn't be creating services, because services come with so much power. They can do so much on your computer. They run all the time. This thing is running on this computer constantly, updating this text file or whatever it's doing. It's running, or at least it could be running. And in this case, it's running as the system, right? Because services by default run as the most powerful piece on the computer, which is, well, one of the most powerful pieces on the computer, which is called system. It can do anything to the machine. And
Right.
so we don't really need that level of power for this service, right? Like, we're not doing and editing large parts of the system, anything like that. So one of the things that we could do that I thought about when this person made the comment is that we could say, hey, let's install our service as a different, as a lower privileged machine than what we were doing. And I wanted to try to remember if I could remember how to do that. And I'm not going to be able to remember it because I just thought of this right before we started. And there, yes. So there is another one that we could use. I think it's called local account, if I remember correctly. This is another user on the machine that only has access to the machine and can't get off of the machine to other networks. You can't use this service to get into the service and then attack other computers and other kinds, because this service can only run on this machine. All right, it can only do things on the one computer. Now in the sandbox, you can't get out of it anyway. But if you're on another computer, imagine someone was like able to get into your service and attack it somehow, some way. Well, then they would be trapped only on this machine if you ran as local account instead of running as the super system that can operate both on this machine and on the network. Is that making sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah. So, yeah.
No, I was gonna say I don't think I've ever heard of the local account.
Yeah.
Is it a Windows 10, Windows 11 thing?
No, it's been around for a very long time. Maybe
okay.
Windows XP. It might
wow.
have been Windows 7. Vista. It might have been Vista. I have to remember. And then we're doing all this by memory. Yeah, local service versus network service. Is it just local service? All right, let's just put... I was trying to remember off the top of my head the actual name for this, and I should have looked it up a little bit. Let's see if I can build local service and if this works. All right?
Okay.
So here we go. Running. Of course I can build it. Because this is an account name, I could put anything into it. Let's start up our sandbox. I think I close it. Yep. Spin up our sandbox. And the way you can see what service you're running as, I should have left it running so we could have seen the previous version. That's okay. We can always switch back and forth and look at this. All right, let's go ahead, bin x86, debug, enus, and let's try to run our latest package. Install it. Yeah, it is not local service. All right, so this error says service deployment Dojo Cat could not be installed. Verify that you have sufficient privileges to install system services. This is a generic error message you get anytime your service cannot be started.
Okay.
So if I do a refresh over here, yeah, it did. You can see it's not even installed. All right. So if you see this message where it says service this could not be installed, verify that you have sufficient privileges to install system services. The Windows installer has sufficient privileges. This basically says something's wrong with your service and it could not be either installed or could not be started. All right. This is great. This is an error message we should have hit it before because it's a fantastic one. Everybody's like, well, why don't I have permission? I'm an installer. It should have the permissions I need. And you're like, no, this error message is not helpful. Okay. So whenever you see this error message pop up, what you want to do is open up your service control manager in here and do a refresh and try to find your service in here. And this is the way you debug. You're like, if you see it in here, that means it's successfully installed, but your service failed to start and you can try to start it. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. And if it's not in here at all, that means that you have some configuration wrong that prevented it from being installed at all. And my problem is that I have the wrong name for this service. And Bob's going to remind me what it is here. He's at NT. I forgot these are documented, and I should have gone and looked them up. The local service name is NT Authority Local Service. That rings a better bell. I'm going to build it from here. Rebuild. Watch it in the background. Build started. Build completed. I'm now going to run this again. Here we go. And hopefully we have better luck this time. Just thinking about it. Ta-da! There. You saw how it took a second?
Yes.
I mean we got farther. And look, now I just hit refresh up here, and our deployment dojo shows up. Now I'm going to double click on it. And where is the words where it says who it's running as? Log on. This account as local service. Okay, so this is a special built-in account in Windows. That means I can only access this machine. I cannot be used. If someone was to get into this service somehow, crack into the service and hack it, you can't then get off of this machine. So while you may be able to take over this machine, you can't get to other machines, at least not from this service. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So guess what? There's another one called network service. And this one has no provisions on this machine, but it can access other machines. Right? So this allows you a service that talks, that's purpose is to talk to other computers, is what a network service would do. Now, in our case, network service is going to work out so well. Right? Because we would have no permissions to this. And what is our service doing on this machine? Oh, it's not started. It's running. Uh-oh. Oh. Oh, did I hit a bug? I think it said it started. Let's stop it. Start it. Oh. Oh. My memory's a little faulty here, David. Notice we don't have a text file here. Right? Here's our 3 apps. The text file's missing. In fact, this is going to tell us, hey, could not find the file. Why is the file not here? And my memory is a little bit off. Local service doesn't have permission to write to protected locations on the machine either, which includes program files.
Oh, so when it was installing, it couldn't put that?
No, it installed it. So the Windows installer put these exes on the machine. But when the Windows service starts up, this service in the background is failing right now, going, I can't create my file. I can't create my file. I can't create my file. And silently failing inside right now.
Okay.
All right. So I think we've left ourselves for a pretty good mystery. So how are we going to solve this, right? If we want to run as local service, which means we have less permissions, which means if we get hacked, we can't attack the system parts of the machine, and we can't attack other parts of the machine, which is pretty nice, right? But that means that we have to find some place on the machine that local service can write to so that we can do our job. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So how are we going to do that? Well, next time, I don't often say exactly what we're going to do next time, but I'm going to tell you exactly what we're going to do. Next episode, because we're out of time this time, is we're going to go set up this registry key, and we're going to put a file path that local service can write to, so that we now don't have to run at the top level permissions where this exe is installed and under program files. Right? So by configuring it, we'll set up the configuration, then the Windows service will be able to write its file somewhere when it's running as local service and does not need the system permissions to take over the machine. Cool?
Yep.
All right.
That's cool.
Bob, thank you very much for reminding me the name NT Authority. I had totally forgotten it. We are obviously not going to check in this account change, so I'm going to delete that part, and we will get the last little bit in there. All right, David, I'm going to keep typing, and we're going to go sparring.
Okay.
Questions, things you want to talk about, even in preparation for next week, anything that's come to mind. I'm going to miss these changes here. All right.
No, I need to look up a little bit about the local system account. I mean, it seems like that would have been a pretty good default for a lot of things that get installed, but you're seeing where the downfall is. We need our own directory somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere that does not require system access to write to it.
Right. So I'm assuming nowhere under program files. Is it going to have to be like somewhere on the root or something? Or
well, no, the root is often protected as well, although maybe. But the important part is like nothing under Windows can be written to either, right? You can't go, because if we were running as local service, we could start deleting files out of Windows itself.
Sure.
That's really powerful, right? Which is another reason why running as local system is kind of scary, even though that's the default that services run under. So yeah, we'll have to go find a directory that we can write to as local service. All right, looks like I already committed those changes, so I am going to do a git push. And it's going to tell me the command because I never remember it. We're doing everything from the command line today, people. So that's what we're doing here. Git push set upstream origin episode 27. This is taking my episode 27 branch and pushing it up to GitHub. There we go. And GitHub is very cool in that it gives us a little, what do you call it? URL that we can just click on, actually, in my browser. I forgot. And just click on it. And ta-da! Now we can go type this. What is this? What do I call this? Episode 27. Cleaning up the mess we left with WiX v4. All right. So nice little episode today. Something simple. Create that pull request. There are 2 little changes in it. Make sure I do have those changes. I think we do. Yep. Cleaning up the mess we left and remove application data text file. So that was something I really want to do. And we started the conversation about having a less privileged service, right? Having fewer rights inside our service that we don't need. And so we have cleaned up our application data. And now we need to go make it so that we can run as local service next time and have a place that we can write our text file. Make sense?
Yep. Makes sense.
That's going to be next week. That's what I have for this week. Something simple. In the end, all we had to do is get this one line. Oh, we also updated HeatWave to show that updating inside Visual Studio does work, even though sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, just go install from the, just double click the V6, download it separately. All right. We'll be back next week. Nice quick episode here. Nobody's asking questions. I kind of delay a little bit because I know there's a little bit of time. Thank you everybody for joining us. If you have other things, as you can see, if you leave comments either in chat when you're here with us or later on, I add those to the end of the queue of things that we will talk about. Someone went and asked about, the running or why I said services should not generally be used, which led us down this path of running as a less privileged service, which will give us a couple good episodes of content and things that maybe that'll be applicable for you. So if there are things that are interesting for you, leave a comment. Until then, Dave, we're back next week. Sounds good?
Sounds good.
All right. All of you have a wonderful time. Keep coding. You know we are. Bye.
Bye.